The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz, along with former Oshkosh Mayor and City Councilwoman Melanie Bloechl. We've all heard of the cable news network CNN. Well, have you heard of OCNN? Maybe people haven't, a lot of folks haven't, but we hope that you'll be hearing more about it very soon. Oshkosh Community, what is it guys? Oshkosh Community News Network, right?
There you go.
It's so new, I'm flubbing up the name. This is something very new here in the Oshkosh area. It's an alternative news source, and joining us on this edition to talk about it are the president and vice president of OCNN. The president to my immediate left is Miles Maguire, and to his immediate left is Vice President Bill Hare. Thank you both very much for being here tonight.
Thank you. You're welcome.
We
Thank you.
appreciate it. We first heard about this. I think I saw a little blurb in the Oshkosh Northwestern about your first meeting that you had earlier this summer. And it sounded like a great project. I went to that meeting, was very impressed with what I saw. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what OCNN is and where you came up with the idea for it?
Okay. OCNN is a project to develop what's called participatory journalism. That is where it's not the media bringing the news to the community, but the community presenting the news to itself. And there's sort of an interesting historical perspective here in that if you go back 100 years, in the first 50 years that Oshkosh was a city, there were 50 newspapers that were started or restarted here, including 9 that were published in German. And then you fast forward a century and we have one newspaper, and what we're trying to do is to kind of reclaim and recreate that atmosphere of many voices, many different perspectives, and doing that through 21st century technology, the internet.
And what you have are websites called blog sites.
Right.
For anyone who's not familiar with the terminology blog, and a lot of folks aren't, it's basically just a web blog. It's or a web log, in other words. It's a website where everyone can just sort of, as Miles said, be participatory, and it's very interactive.
Correct.
Why don't you tell folks,
Sure.
You've actually got 2 different web blogs,
Right.
web logs.
Right.
One is the OCNN one, and then the other is OshBlog.
Right.
Why don't you guys share with the audience what each one does, and then we'll
ahead.
talk more
Okay.
about the specifics.
Okay. Well, the only bad thing about blogs is the name. It's a terrible name.
Scares you. Yeah.
It does.
Waiting for like a blob to come out at you.
You wonder what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But the great thing about them is that they are free and easy to create. And so you can, if you have an idea of something that you want to publish or a particular topic that you want to pursue, you just get on the computer and a couple of keystrokes later you have a website. And so, as you say, we have a couple of different things that we have going. One of them is something we call the OshBlog. And what we're trying to do with that is to create sort of a virtual town square where anybody with any message can come along and post it. And it can be a political message, it can be a commercial message, it can be a personal message. Just you can go there and set it up and it's there for all the world to see.
Just keep it clean, right?
Yeah, because we can always take it down. But we won't as long as it's clean. But then there are different topical blogs that we are creating and that we will create from time to time as things come along. One of the more I think, exciting things that we're doing right now is an online candidates forum or an online debate
Oh, that's great.
involving the 4 candidates in the 54th district. And we'll actually have 2 blogs for that. One will be limited to the candidates, and they will be given a series of questions. We're doing this with the Public Library and the League of Women Voters, so we're kind of pooling our resources together. And this will start September 15th. And the way it will work, will work the way a live debate would work. They will start with opening statements, and then they'll get a series of questions. So they'll have a question, and they'll have 72 hours to come up with a response. They'll all respond, and then because the blog is interactive, they will also be able to comment back and forth on each other's statements.
That is so cool.
That's going to be very good, because the problem that we have seen with the League of Women Voters, and it's no slam against the League, but you know, it's not really a debate because you don't get to challenge each
Right.
other, especially for the incumbent. I think that the questions for an incumbent should be different and should be a little more direct to their specific voting record.
Right. And then, I mean, I think that will be interesting in itself, but we will also have a parallel blog called a Citizens Forum, and that we're inviting everyone in the community to be a part of, to post comments, so that at this stage what we're asking them to do is help us shape the debate, give us ideas for what are the questions that should be asked and what are the topics that should be covered. And then once the debate gets rolling, that blog will be available for people to say, wow, you know, that was a terrible answer, or yeah, that's a great
I'm going
answer."
to love this thing. This is going to be so cool.
I think it'll be fun, and I think that one of the things that will happen, or I hope that one of the things that will happen, is that, of course, with the internet and with technology, you have an opportunity to attract a lot of the younger and sort of dropped out voters, and say, here's a way for you to get involved. And we're doing it now, you know, not the day before, the week before the election, but over the next 4, 5, 6 weeks, we're trying to get people involved so they're watching the debate as it evolves, and so that when election day arrives, they're in a position to make a good decision.
What's really neat about this too is not just the younger and maybe the dropped out, but there's a lot of people that are intimidated by the process, that in order to go to a forum or to have to stand up, which unfortunately doesn't take place, but if you had to stand up at a forum and ask a question of a candidate, you know, it's a very, you know, intimidating process. You have to identify yourself, you're on TV. You know, some people are not real comfortable with that, where there's a little bit of anonymity to this.
Exactly.
Where, you know, somebody's name and face isn't necessarily being put there, or that sense of retaliatory activity that, well, they know I work at such and such a place, and oh geez, now they're going to give me hell for this.
Exactly.
You know?
The voting booth is private, and that's, you know, one of the central ways that our democracy operates. So this is a way to say you can have your voice heard, but anonymously, so that you can feel free to speak.
Now, one of the questions that I had, because when you were saying, like, you're going to give candidates the opportunity to respond to written questions, are you going to limit the space so that you don't get, like, the tale of two hearts written to you, or?
That's really going to be up to the candidates, and one of the things that they have to realize, of course, that on the internet, people's attention spans are not indefinite. So if somebody writes a 1,000-word answer, you know, it'll get posted, but I think they're going to have to think about whether they really want to do that or if they want to be a little more
succinct.
direct. Yes.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
one of the interesting things about using the internet is people are still learning how to use it. Blogging
Right.
is something that's relatively new. The idea of something like OCNN is relatively new, but we think it's very exciting, and the participatory aspect of it is very critical. And Oshkosh really, continues to need that kind of activity in the community, I think.
Now, you talked, Miles, earlier on that at one time, and I've been a lifelong resident of Oshkosh. I come from the old Russian district, so it was very interesting to hear that there were certain newspapers that were actually published in German, because I just think that's pretty cool. Wasn't around back then, though. Just want that clarified on the air. But one of the questions that I have is, what made you decide to do that? I mean, it's very obvious that we need a broader base of opinions. I mean, one newspaper, and a very homogenized newspaper, because it's owned, you know, the same company owns all of them everywhere. I mean, you
Amen.
can pick it up and you can read the same damn story in Appleton that you did in Oshkosh, and it's not, I don't think it embraces what the difference is culturally and the diversity in Oshkosh. I mean, we are different than Neenah, we are different than Appleton, and there's very unique differences that we need to celebrate a little bit more, or kick the crap out of, whichever way you feel about it, you know. But that really need to be brought to the forefront, and people like to talk about something that's close to them in their own backyard. Is it, and I don't want to put words in your mouth here, but what predicated this decision to come to this kind of network, is it because of the homogenized kind of snooze news? How do you like that setup, Miles?
In a word, yes.
As I say, respectfully, yes.
God, they agreed. I'm writing that down.
Well, some perspective. My background is, I'm not from Oshkosh. I'm from the East Coast. I'm from
We'll
Baltimore.
get you converted, no problem,
go.
Miles.
A?
There you go. And actually started my newspaper career at what was then a family-owned newspaper, the Baltimore Sun, which is now a Tribune. You know, it's one of the.
You mean it's not a Gannett?
No, it's not a Gannett. Have spent 2.5 decades working in different aspects of journalism, newspapers, magazines, newsletters, and watching in dismay as the field changed and as it became more and more homogenized, the major chains, the additional corporatization, the cross-media ownership, so that the TV station, the newspapers are owned by the same people and saying the same things. And I think it's bad for journalism, it's bad for the communities, it's reflected in things like a drop-off in newspaper readership, in news viewership is down, voter participation is down, and if you just do polls of people, do you know what the issues are? You know, you find a lot of blank faces.
Sure.
And I think all of that stuff works together. Once I came to Oshkosh, I arrived here in the late 90s when the Northwestern was still independent, and watched, as I guess we all did, in dismay as it turned over in ownership. I had an opportunity to do some sort of scholarly research looking at the paper as it's changed through those different phases of ownership. And you could see that, in things like the number of sources that are used per story, et cetera, the paper has just changed and,
Well, who's
and
gonna,
not for the better.
There's really, what is the incentive for them to really work hard on a story when there's really no competition to refute or rebut
They're
anything
the only
that's
game in town.
Yeah, and little shows like us, I mean, we're gaining in popularity, which I have to tell you, when we first started this show, I was actually rather surprised at how many people just really grabbed onto it and said, oh my God, you're really doing this. And we were real excited, and it was because of this very element that we're talking about, that there was no dissenting voice out there. And if there was, it wasn't getting published anyway.
Exactly, and I think it's interesting that you point out and actually talk about your show. I think in some ways OCNN has similarities and parallels to the OCAT and to shows like this. It's just a different media and a slightly different way of going at it, but it's all about allowing the community to have a variety of voices and using the technology that's available for a community this size to have better communication and really richer from a cultural perspective.
So now you come from a sales and marketing background, you journalism. How did the two of you come together and then brainstorm with this baby blog? I mean, how does that culminate?
Well, as you can already tell in just the last 5 or 10 minutes, this was really, Miles is the brains and the vision behind OCNN. It didn't take long for him to convince me that it was an exciting project, and I was excited to be involved in it. One of the things I think that, one of my little additions to it is we're trying to get something started called the Oshkosh Dining Guide. So it's not particularly, high-level journalism. It's not quite as fancy as Miles's candidate forum, but it's something that I think there's room for in the community, because if you look at the Northwestern, for instance, I mean, there isn't a lot of restaurant review activity. There's advertising, and maybe there are some reviews, but it's hard to really get a flavor of the different restaurants, the new restaurants, the established restaurants. And so we're establishing it almost it really as a blog, so that as people in the community can talk about their favorite restaurant, or they can talk about a new restaurant in town, or even ask questions. A restaurant that they've thought about going to but never been to, they post a blog on the website, and they can ask people whether the restaurant's worth going to. So it's really an interactive forum for people to learn and get different opinions and get different information about something as mundane but as important.
I was going to say,
as restaurants.
You're in Wisconsin.
It's very
Food
important.
is never mundane here. This is
No doubt
big
about
stuff.
it. No doubt about it.
Well, I think it's, people, I think, are going to, I hope anyway, that they will catch on to this, just like they did to Ion Oshkosh, just like they did to Commentary with Tony Palmieri from the university system, because they are clamoring for something different. I mean, everywhere you go, people are not happy with the Northwestern, and yet it is the only real news source that there is. We try and offer news, but we tape a couple times a month.
Sure.
You don't have that immediacy, so we try and do things on the website, although most of what we've been putting on the website is more opinion type pieces and things like that. But we try and get news stories on there when we can. But blogging, despite the fact that the word sounds weird, this is for the first time ever, mainly because blogging is a new thing, but I mean, it is catching on so quickly that even at the conventions, the presidential conventions, this is the first time that bloggers have been credentialed as respectable, true journalists.
Exactly.
I have to ask you guys, when you blog, because I'm totally a novice at this. I'm not a computer literate person. I turn it on.
That's the beauty of it, though.
I turn it on, I can get my email. You ask me to do a whole lot more than that, I got a problem. So you're talking to a novice here, and we want to participate. We'd like to participate in the candidates forum. I want to find Indian food or Thai food or whatever it is. How do I start this? I go, tell me, what do I do first?
Well, why don't we, that's because that's a good question. You actually have two different blog sites, one that's part of the other, the main one. You've got the OCNN, it's oshkoshnews.org.
Right.
But then you've got OshBlog, that is sort of a child of that parent. Why don't we talk about what each one does and maybe the various components of each? Because the restaurant thing comes under the OshBlog.
No, that's actually that's
see, I'm confused too. Let's get us all clear.
I think I'm getting a headache.
Oh, I hope not.
I'm going to have an incident.
The good news is that they're all easy to use, and if you can use email, then you can blog.
Okay, all right. Well, that's a good sign.
And if we start, say, with the OshBlog, and if you come to our site, oshkoshnews.org, you'll see a little graphic at the top, and it'll say, join the OshBlog. And you click here, and you'll go to the OshBlog, and you'll just see whatever anybody has posted there. And off to the side, there's a link that says, join the blog. And when you click on that link, an email window pops up, and you just send off an email. And what that gives us is your email address. And the email address is the key to getting signed on to a blog. So once we're notified that you want to be a member of our blog, we will send an invitation off to your email address that, and it's all pre-formatted, and it has a link. You click on that link, and it just walks you through the process of how to be in the blog. So it's very simple. Then once you're in the blog, posting is like writing an email message. When you're ready to make a post, there's a little thing that you click on, and up comes a window, and there's a title bar where you can put in your headline or whatever, and then a message area, and you type up what you want, and you can bold and italic
I think
and
this
underline.
stinks, or this is good.
Right,
or
exactly.
Am I limited as to... one of the other questions that I have is, going back, you need an email address. Is that kept private? Because a lot of people's email addresses may actually identify who they are by virtue of name.
Yeah.
Is that private?
Yes, it
Nobody
is.
can get a hold of that. So people who are concerned about
Right.
the anonymity and
Right.
non-retaliatory kind of thing.
We use a service that's called, of all things, Blogger.
Appropriate.
Yes, that is actually owned by Google, the same people who do the big search engine. So it's a very solid software. It's very reliable and stable. And what you'll do is you'll actually create a Blogger account as you go through this process. In creating the Blogger account, you can make up a screen name, and you will be known by that screen name when you post into the blog. So if you want it to be your actual name, it will be your actual name. If you want it to be, something else, it can be something else as well. So that's one way to be part of this, but you don't have to go through that whole process. We also have comments, sort of as you have on your website. So if you just see something there and you want to add a comment, you can just click on there's a little post a comment here, and you'll either have an option to post it anonymously or to post it under your name if you have a Blogger account, and you can make that choice. If you want to put your name with it, you can. If you just want to shoot a little zinger off, you can do that as well.
Well, I think I might need a name like Miss Kitty or something like that.
I think you do need a name like that.
Don't you think, like Miss Kitty? And then you just know if anybody's already using that name, I'm really sorry. Because now everybody's going to be going, what did Miss Kitty have to say?
Okay, so screen names. Okay, so we got that squared away. Now you've got different sections of the Oshkosh Community News Network. One of them is the Oshkosh at 151.
Right.
Explain what that is.
Okay. I'll do that one
Whoever
too.
wants to.
Look at Miles.
You're
Like,
doing so well.
come on.
This is one of the problems that we face is that this is a new thing. And so we're trying to develop ways for the community to get involved with something that they've never heard of, they've never seen before. And just as Bill was explaining with the Oshkosh Dining Guide, we don't want it to all be, political, heavy-duty, issue-oriented stuff. We wanted to engage people at all their levels of interest. Oshkosh at 151 is an electronic scrapbook where we are inviting members of the community to submit photographs that they've taken during this year, the city's 151st year. And it's a project that we're doing in conjunction with the Oshkosh Public Library, because what we're trying to create is a permanent electronic archive that will be, a vision of what Oshkosh was like in its 151st year. And what we have done is organize it into different categories. So we've asked people if you have pictures of the outdoors, or of sports, or of kids, or of your pets, or of if you had visitors come to town, or if you were out of town and you saw someone, you can pick these different categories. Send us your photographs. We're assuming that so many people have digital cameras now, or even a cell phone that can take pictures. They can just electronically shoot the pictures to us. We also ask them to provide, sort of the information you'd write on the back of the photograph. This is Joe from left, and that's our dog.
In his shorts, and the dog is pooping on the ground.
Exactly.
Thank
If you care to send that photo.
Yeah. Did you get that
A
one?
little decorum.
Sorry. Yeah, decorum. I get that a lot.
Yes, Miss Kitty.
But if you have the traditional photo on paper, you can send that in, and we'll scan that. We'll turn it into a digital image, and then we're hoping to have, who knows how many hundreds, thousands of images. We also have been working with Camera Casino here in town. They've agreed to sort of add an incentive, which is some processing. So we haven't figured out exactly what we're going to do, but we're going to have some kind of prize that people who submit their photos there'll be some kind of judging, and the top winners will get some valuable services from Camera Casino.
Who will judge something like that? Will it be the community who judges?
That's what we're working out. We haven't. There's some very talented people at the library who really run the website and have a lot more knowledge of the internet than I do. So we're trying to to think of some kind of online polling system so people can pick the images that they like and do it that way. So that's the idea, is to let the community be involved, to interact, to memorialize the important things that are happening this year. And then who knows, 50, 100 years from now, people will come back and they'll want to say, well, what was Oshkosh like back in 2004, 2005, and they can see the pictures right there.
What if anyone has, I realize this is just from, the 151st year, but what if someone has photos from, way back when, turn of the century or whenever, that they want to share with the public, that maybe, something that they have found in a scrapbook or something like that. Would you turn something like that away, or do you have the means to incorporate something like that somewhere?
One of the things that, again, going back to this blogging software, one of the things that blogging will let you do is not only capture text, but you can capture images very easily. You can even capture audio, voices. So I would say that's probably outside the scope of this project, but if there were people who had that, we could probably start a blog that would accommodate that.
And I think you can see from the description you've had of the three different items, the forum, the candidates forum, 151, and from the dining guide, that we really see this as being a project-based environment. And what we're really hoping to do is, as we continue to gain momentum, and as Miles indicated, we're really at the infancy now, so there's a little bit of inertia that we're overcoming. But as we gain that momentum and we begin to get known by more people and there are more interested parties, what we're really hoping to find is people that have ideas for things that they want to do, that they want to participate in, that are journalistic and that are good for the community, and that they bring those to us, and they become members of the OCNN. And if they have a project like that and they want to end up with some kind of a scrapbook in the past instead of documenting a given year, then that's certainly something we'd consider. And if enough people or a group of people had the energy to do that, that would be a project that we'd love to consider.
Go ahead.
Sorry. You talked about becoming a member. Is there a charge to become a member of OCNN?
There is, it's really a voluntary membership fee. We say that we're looking for two things. We're looking for members, and the membership fee is $35 a year, or $5 if you're a student or a senior, so it's not very large. And that's really just to fund our kind of incidental expenses. Or you can be a contributor, and that means actually joining the blog and posting things or sending photographs.
And there's no charge for that?
There's no charge for that.
All right.
And you don't have to be a member to be a contributor, and you don't have to be a contributor if you're a member. It's open in any way, and really we've tried to keep the barriers as low as possible. Fortunately, we spoke with John Nichols, the director of the public library. He thought this was a good project and said, well, we could provide you with the free hosting services. When he did that, that essentially eliminated our major ongoing expense, because we're a volunteer organization. Bill and I are doing this as volunteers. So for all intents and purposes, we have no expenses. We would eventually like to be at a place where we had perhaps a physical presence somewhere, that we had a staff, that we could do more things. We'd like to get there, but we don't have a timetable for getting there. At this point, as Bill said, it's mostly a matter of overcoming inertia, and we're trying to make it as easy for people to be a part of this as we can.
Will there be advertising associated with this, like some computer stuff is? When you go out there, there's, in order for it to pay for itself, you go out and seek advertisers and have sales and things like that. Well, let's say you have a business. Let's just use one of these restaurants, for example. And they want to advertise, they've brought on something new, or they remodeled or did something different. Would they be able to go on to this site and say, there's an opportunity, things have changed?
They could do that today for free. And that's, again, part of what we're trying to do, is to not have barriers. You want to be a part of this, you have a special fish fry, you can go on the site and just tell the community that this is happening this week or whatever. We are in the process of applying for a 501c3 status with the IRS. And the IRS has some rules and considerations about...
That's a nice way to put it.
Non-profit status.
Yeah.
Right. About... It's a very reasonable thing, actually. They're saying, well, if you want tax-exempt status, what are you doing that makes you worthy of tax-exempt status? What are you doing that's different from what a commercial publisher, somebody that we could tax,
Right.
would be doing? So, and one of the things that we're doing is sort of creating a venue where commercial messages can be delivered free of charge.
Which is great, especially for brand new businesses
Exactly.
who don't
Exactly.
have those
Right.
advertising dollars,
Right.
because
Or-
advertising is hugely expensive.
Yes,
No doubt about it.
A sole proprietorship, something like that. A handyman, something like that, could use the OshBlog just to say, "Hey, look, I'm out there. I'm available. I've got some time. I can do these things for you." That's not to say that we would turn away corporate sponsorships, for example. So, under the IRS rules, there are differences between advertisements and sponsorships. A sponsorship, you can sort of put your name out there. You can't promote a specific product or a specific price or something like that. So, we would do that. But again, right now, money is not an issue. We're happy to say.
That's really a fortunate place to be.
Yes.
Really, I mean.
It is. It is. This is truly, I think, a community service. That's what we're trying to provide. If the community finds it valuable and wants to support it, we will, I think, use that money investment well. But it's not critical at this point.
Well, hopefully, and thankfully, we do have an awful lot of folks who watch this show, and hopefully, many of them are downtown business people. There are so many little shops downtown that people just don't know exist because, I don't want to get political here, but we've got OCDC here in town that is just not, we don't feel, promoting the businesses downtown. And they're not getting a fair shake, and before you know that they're even there, they're gone. They haven't been able to maintain their operation. So here might be a good way for some of these downtown business owners to jump in and let people know through your generous offer on your blog sites that that they're here and here's what they offer, and maybe we can all pitch in and do OCDC's job for them.
I'm just excited to hear what people have to say in the community about, what are they thinking? What do they like? What would they like to see the city do? Or what direction do they want to go? And it just opens up an opportunity to have this dialogue with no intimidation factors. You really get to hear what people have to say without having that judgment by the powers to be thrust upon them. I mean, that, and so you get that core of people that you don't normally hear from. And historically, politicians have always said, well, if nobody's screaming, everybody must love us. So we'll find out.
Right.
I hope people use this, because I'll be paying very close attention. And if you see entries from Miss Kitty,
Miss
you
Kitty,
know.
we'll know. We'll know who it's from. Good.
Come on!
What are some of the other elements here? We've talked a little bit about the dining guide. Is there anything else to the dining guide, Bill, that you think folks need to know?
The dining guide is really just getting started. If you go on the website, you'll be able to click on it and get in, and you can see that there's some entries. Most of them are board members and a few friends and some early membership, and there's mainly, it's difficult. It's amazing how quickly it is to do anything but a positive review. We haven't been very harsh yet, but there are some good reviews out
You
there.
get indigestion one time, I'm telling you, that's going to change real quick.
Well, I really do expect now that we're going to see a Miss Kitty review. It won't be positive.
Now you watch, somebody is going to see this show.
I know, I'm going to
just
use
because
Miss
they're
Kitty.
gonna use
Miss
it.
Kitty.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's right.
But what we are going to be doing in the near future is we're going to, in the small nucleus of members that we do have now, we're going to be getting some stickers out to them so that when they do review a restaurant, or when they enjoy a restaurant and decide that they're going to put a review on the site, that they can have that proprietor put a sticker in their window saying, I've been reviewed on the Oshkosh Dining Guide. In some ways, we think of this as the Zagat survey that's become so popular in so many major cities. We're not going to have the formal star rating or a numeric rating. It's all going to be just blog entries for now. But we do want both the proprietors and the people out in the community to start to recognize that there is a dining guide. We're also hoping to actually have some of the proprietors put up tent cards. And if they're getting positive reviews, if it's an excellent restaurant and they're getting positive reviews on the dining guide, we want them to essentially be promoting the dining guide and OCNN, so that the momentum that we're trying to develop gets started.
Well,
both
okay, so
ways.
now that automatically moves me into a question.
Uh-oh.
Now, you want to put up tents and you want them to be positive reviews, but what if they get stinky reviews? Now what? Now nobody's going to... See, that's what scares me, is that you want... One of the things that I think is really important is to move away from that whole political sphere of, well, we want you to promote it and we'll give you a really good review.
Right.
But if you get a really crappy review, do you know what I'm saying?
Oh,
where
there's
I'm
no
going
doubt
with
about
that?
it. In those situations where, well, first of all, I think most restaurants aren't going to get all good or all bad reviews. I mean, that's the nice thing, is if you get a review in a newspaper, you've got one person that goes out, reviews it, that's what gets published, and you get one person's opinion. The exciting thing about the blogging or OCNN or the dining guide is that you're going to get a whole rainbow of different views.
Because
And that's
all
what's
different
important.
people,
Right.
right.
So you raise an interesting point, and there's no doubt about it. If there's a restaurant that's tending to get negative reviews, they're not going to want to put up a tent card, and they're not going to want to put up the sticker. So certainly you're not going to get universal usage out of those particular vehicles.
Okay.
But it's
But that won't keep you from allowing people to give if they feel as though, let's say, the tortillas are, that you're not going to
Not
eat,
at all.
that people will still be allowed to give whatever review they feel is warranted
Sure.
for whatever.
other than cleanliness and basic decency, we're not going to be stopping any
Right.
reviews.
Okay.
And one of the beauties, of course, of the blog is that, restaurants do sometimes have a bad night. The chef quits or whatever.
Or should.
That too. But with the blog, that if a restaurant got a bad review, the restaurant owner can go back onto the blog and say, hey, wait a second, I'm sorry you didn't like that, but this is why, and we've changed that, and come on back.
And that's really true. It's
Yeah.
kind of like a really quick, consumer edification. Like, okay, we had a bad night. We need to change some things,
Right.
rather than not knowing about it and just assuming all's well with the world.
Right.
They can make some expedient changes.
Again, the same mentality that we thought should be employed when the Oshkosh Tourism Organization wanted to have their meetings closed because, a restaurant or a hotel might get a bad thing going and they wanted to.
Oh, when
kinda
they were
keep that
having
under wraps.
negotiations.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So
I like
this,
all open government.
So this is
I
a
think it
good
makes
thing
for
because
interesting.
people will have the opportunity to say, oh, well, they did just have a bad night and they've corrected the problem. Or they can hear from a ton of other people who
Right.
say, it was great.
Right.
Or
So-
they might want to remove the lamb chowder from the menu. You just never know.
Exactly.
What are you guys thinking about as you do the dining and entertainment thing, the guide? Are you going to do like wine, and when you say entertainment, is it going to be like movie reviews and theater, our grand theater, or?
I think that's an interesting question. The answer to that is we don't have it master planned to that degree. The exciting thing about this is the community will take it there if that's what they want to see. I would love to see some of those things, and I know amongst the small member group that we have now, we've talked about some of those things, and we've had that same question. Will this go beyond dining? The other question we tend to get is, will it end up going beyond Oshkosh? Will we end up having bloggers that start talking about restaurants that aren't just in Oshkosh? And we really don't know where that's going to go. That's part of the exciting thing about it.
Could take on a life of its own
It
faster than you know.
But it can still be a resource for people in Oshkosh, even if it's not necessarily all Oshkosh-based establishments.
Getting back to the journalism part of this whole thing, you've got a little flyer here, and I just want to read a section for folks. It says the new kind of journalism is participatory journalism, sometimes called civic journalism, open source journalism, personal media, or grassroots reporting, allowing individuals, whether trained as journalists or not, to become involved in and exert greater control over how the news is covered. Now, we're talking here about true news, are we not? Fires, city council meetings, accidents, any kind of what we in journalism would consider true news, actual news. So, what are your thoughts? I realize what it says here in the pamphlet, but how do you envision this kind of happening?
Well, one of the things that I can bring to bear here is that I am a teacher of journalism, and so I have journalism students. And one of the ideas that we'll probably be working on this semester is a project called the Oshkosh Agenda, where I'm going to ask my students to go out, and they'll be working on different beats, to make contact with people in the community and ask them to identify what they think are the major issues. And we will kind of pull all that together and make that available on the website. So that's one possibility. What I'd really love to see happen is kind of neighborhood-based reporting, where someone may decide, well, you know, over here by the lake or over here by the river or wherever, I'm going to report on things that are happening. That you know, this construction project that was supposed to be done 6 weeks ago is still closed. Or here's a piece of cement pavement that needs to be repaired, and I've told the city about it 3 times and it's still there. And here's a photograph I've just taken, and it's time-stamped, and it's on the weblog, so you know that I just took it, and it's still there. So it could take lots of different forms. It could also be, you know, labors of love, someone who's involved with a particular sporting sport, a league, something like that, a bowling league or a softball league, and wants to cover that very intensively. Again, the beauty of the blog is that it's very flexible, very easy to set up. But as Bill said, we don't have this master planned. It's not mapped out. There are limitless opportunities, and we're just what we're trying to do is to create the framework that people can step into, create, you know, with the help of people like you, the notice, the publicity that it's available, and tell people that we will provide the support and the services. If you have an interest, you have an idea, we'll try to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if they want to see something like that happen, do they need to communicate with either of you that, gee, I'd really like to go in this direction with this, and I need a little bit more help, or...
They certainly could.
Or is it just something that they can just go ahead and do on their own and
Sure.
make it just happen?
Yeah, one of the things that we have on the site, we just call it Blog Central. If people are keeping their own weblogs here in Oshkosh, and you know, the great thing about weblogs is that anybody can start one. The bad news is that there are 100,000 weblogs out there, and nobody knows where they are or knows how to pay attention to them. So what we're trying to be is kind of a portal that will include a link and will feature your weblog on our front page. So if you're already doing it on your own and you want to keep doing it on your own, that's fine. We'll just give you a little added publicity. We're planning to create we do have a small board of directors now. We're trying to create next a projects committee where, and if anybody out there wants to be a member, just let us know. And these would be people who would be interested in helping us create content, identifying different kinds of projects that we could pursue. And, you know, we're open to ideas.
I think that sounds really neat because it's really endless. One of the things that I thought was interesting is when you talked about being a teacher of journalism, and you send out these young students and you say, go cover this and tell us what's going on in the community, or report back to us what they're saying. One of the things when I was on the city council for 12 years, it was very interesting. This very homogenized newspaper, I swear to God, I was at the same meeting that they were. And when I read the paper the following day, it did not even remotely resemble the same damn meeting. Now, I realized that we were probably coming from 2 different perspectives.
But you never had that problem with me when I was
That's
covering
true,
those things.
but you weren't working for the Northwestern.
Well, true.
But that's one of the things that, you know, is there something that you can work with from that perspective? That wouldn't it be interesting to see? Because we do have citizen participation at our council meetings. We have an awful lot of people that watch it from home. I mean, while they don't all go into the chambers, they will, you know, watch it from home. Wouldn't it be interesting to be able to compare that indeed, you know, what they've read in the paper, which is usually a column and a half, you know, condensing a 3-hour meeting into a column and a half, and seeing what other people took from that very same meeting. That, you know, are we getting the information? Is it actually crossing over and making sense? Are people absorbing the information? Or are we just kind of going, wah, 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 and it's, you know, going over?
Well, you you put your finger on something that's very important, and I just need to say one word in defense of journalists and reporters, that it's a hard job. I mean, what you just described is difficult. To sit through a 3.5-hour meeting and condense that into 6 inches is tough, and things have to go. And, you know, so I think that we have to have some sympathy for our friends covering
I'll try to
local.
work that up later.
She wasn't expecting that reaction from you.
Yeah.
But that said, you know, part of the problem is going back to this whole problem of the corporatization of newspapers. There's only 6 inches or 12 inches or 15 inches or whatever to cover a 3-hour meeting, and then, you know,
The rest is advertising.
yeah, and then it's tomorrow's paper, and we don't come back to that issue. So one of the beauties of the internet is that it is essentially unlimited. You can publish as much as you want. You can go back over things. You can include links to other sources. You know, there's a lot of information that's available through the city's website, for example, that I don't think people necessarily even know is there. You can find the whole agendas and the, you know, the text of resolutions, you know, and things like that. So I guess the point is that we're not. What we're trying to do is actually develop a different medium that has different strengths, and that there may be better ways of covering things that are medium specific, that are specific to the internet, that no matter how good a newspaper reporter you are, you're still going to be bound by 15, 25 inches, and it's going to stop you.
But at least get the general gist of what happened at the meeting. I think
she said that. Miles. I did not say that.
I do sometimes think that that's true. I mean, I cover NENA politics for the most part from and Menasha from a professional standpoint, and you know, I can oftentimes read what I've written as opposed to what another reporter's written, and they're somewhat similar but different in many respects. Sometimes they're pretty similar, but usually they're quite a bit different. And I think it's what we find to be what we think is important. You know, we're pulling away from the meeting what we think is important, and they may think something else is important.
Exactly.
So, I mean, obviously, you see this going almost anywhere. It truly could take on a life of its own. You've got here some different things that you would like to be pursuing. I noticed that in the year 2005, you're wanting to establish something called an Oshkosh Community Clearinghouse. What is that?
Well, the idea there is that there are lots of organizations and groups in the community that have needs, and there are lots of very kind and caring people in the community. And there are certainly existing ways that people connect through churches and the United Way and things like that, and I think there are other ways of publicizing needs. But this would just be, again, using the internet, using that specific medium to do what it does best, which is to put out a lot of information very quickly, so that sure, the United Way comes around every year with its campaign, and we all know about that. But what if there's a teacher at Merrill Middle School who has a very specific need for a project, you know, maybe some construction paper or you name it, and can just go there and say, I need this, and who knows, maybe someone's shopping at the Office Depot and picks them up and drops it off, or a store manager says, sure, I've got some, I can help you. So that's the idea. It would just be somebody who has a need can publicize it, and at the same time, someone who's retired, who has time or has additional materials available can say, I've got this. Anybody out in the community want to take advantage of it?
It's kind of almost like say if somebody was looking for information, be it historic or whatever, and they're saying, I'm working on this particular project, and does anybody out there know where I could find?
Exactly.
Sure.
And almost like an eBay of information. Right?
Melanie's all into
I
eBay.
just started
She just
eBay.
discovered it. I
So
got
you
her hooked
can
on
do
this.
more than email.
Well, not really. I haven't bought anything yet, but I got to tell you, they don't have to worry about Gambler's-aholic with me. It's shopaholic stuff. I'm thinking, oh my God, who thought of this thing? It's just, but it's really that, and so that's kind of what I'm getting out of this, is that it can be a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and it can be as big or as small as you want it to be.
Exactly.
But it can really bring this community. It's like networking without doing the face-to-face time. which is totally cool.
So is it possible that we can get you to participate with the journalism and cover the council for us?
Well,
I would be happy to do that.
I was just going to say, and now
Let her off the hook.
well, here's the thing. I was actually going to clean up with what comment because when we talked about content, because this goes right to where you're talking about, libel and malice and maliciousness and all that kind of stuff. Do you have to worry about litigiousness or liability or?
Yeah, do we?
Well,
Yeah. See, before you asked me to do something like that, I would have gotten something in writing there.
it's we will be self-policing, so that and there's, if you go on our site, you'll see that we have a statement of ethics, and we say that we will not allow people to use the site to be abusive or insulting or
Insulting. I think you have to
well,
define that a little bit.
Abusive is probably the right word, or invasive of privacy, and that if someone sees something, to alert us, and if it doesn't meet our standards, we'll take it down. The fact is, in the U.S., when you're reporting in the public sphere, it's nearly impossible to commit libel against a public official.
Yes, and I do know that
So,
Firsthand.
very, very well.
But see, the other thing too is that when you're covering meetings, you don't interject personal feelings.
See, that
And-
that would be where I might have some difficulty there because I'm just a little too close to that, and I'd be, I could just see it now. You'd have to get me like a laptop that I could talk into because I couldn't type as fast as I would be thinking.
And from that perspective, there are going to be elements of participatory journalism and OCNN that have a lot more personality and a lot more emotion in them than you might find in the Northwestern or on CBS TV or something of that sort. And then there will be other elements of it, like the candidate forum, where there'll be a little bit less of that. So it's going to be a real mixture.
Will you be separating, like the Northwestern has their letters to the editor, which is by far probably one of the more popular elements of the entire paper. Will you, because blogging is one big letter to the editor, you can write about anything that you want. Will there be a segregated portion that will be dedicated just to maybe something on that line that you can write about anything and it's just kind of separated, or will it just kind of be all mingled in there?
I think at this stage of activity, it's all mingled together.
Okay.
If certain areas take off, we will break those off so that they stand out.
Will you guys be writing editorial pieces yourselves? Will you be,
Well, we're each doing our own blogging on different parts of the site. For me, primarily, it's been the dining guide, but Miles has certainly been elsewhere. In terms of editorial content, I don't know that I certainly don't think that I will be particularly. Miles may be doing a little bit.
Yeah, I have sort of mixed feelings because I don't. I've been a writer for a long time, and I love to do it, but I don't want this to be my vehicle.
I understand.
So I'm
Right.
sort of holding back and saying, I'm trying to interest people like you to get involved here.
As soon as I figure out how to do this.
It was a real invitation.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate that. I really do, because, my only problem is that definition of abusive, insulting, and, I may have to get something in writing, because I'll have to probably check that after every story.
Yeah.
I'll help you get into blogging. I got you squared away on the eBay thing. I'll help
My
you
husband
All right.
thanks you.
Yeah, I could hear him on the phone last night, believe me.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Melanie had mentioned before, Bill, that you come from a sales and marketing background. I guess that was discussed before I came in.
We
into the
can
picture.
pick that up in
We
each other.
bonded
What, just real quickly, what
I'm
is your-
out at Bemis. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for the Clysar Division.
Okay. Now, your board of directors is made up of how many folks?
We're up to 7 now.
Okay. Who are some of the other members, and just real quickly, what, we've got, I think, about 5 minutes or so
Okay.
left, but, what
Are
what
they
do do?
comfortable with having their names
Sure.
bandied about?
Certainly.
With you guys? I wasn't sure. I wanted to make sure.
Well, 2 of them happen to be our spouses.
Oh, there you go.
So we have to bring those out. Roberta Maguire is my wife, and she's an English professor at the university.
And Noelle Baker's my wife, and she's also an English professor at the university.
We also have Trent Scott, who is the chair of the English department at Oshkosh West. and he's sort of our liaison to the school district and the schools in the area. James Sow, who is the chair of the journalism department, and John Nichols, who is the director of the public library, is also coming on board. He's the newest member.
John is a good resource.
Very,
He's-
very, very.
I don't know the others, but
adept.
I don't even know John that well, but
I've worked with John, and he is really forward-thinking. He's got some really great cutting-edge ideas.
Yes, he does.
At budget time, he was a little maddening because I had to stop it. We don't have money for that. But he was really a sharp guy.
and he's a fan of our show too, so we thank him for that. He had mentioned that at that meeting this past summer. So,
Right on, John.
okay, so we've been flashing the www.oshkoshnews.org on the screen throughout the hour. That's where you can go to get to the blog itself. For OshBlog or to the main blog, correct? That's the vehicle, that's the portal to get you almost
Right.
anywhere
Get you everywhere.
that you want to
Exactly.
go. Now, I just want to be certain that I understand this. So you are going to try and get your students then to not just go out and make contact in the community, but with some of the elected officials and so forth, but will they actually be covering meetings and so forth to get some of that real news out there? Or
It'll depend on the students. Different students are at different levels of skill and comfort doing this. So
Sure.
I hope that the advanced ones certainly will.
might be a good intern experience for
Sure,
them.
absolutely.
Any ideas on where you really want this to go? I mean, if you had your druthers, either of you?
Well, there are actually some very interesting community-based participatory journalism sites out there already that other communities have developed. So it's Miles knows them better than I do, but it is very exciting when you see a site that a community has gotten started, 5 or 10 years down the road. It really does become, almost eBay-like, because it can go anywhere. And I think that's really where we do see it. It's what we really are looking for now is people that are listening, that get excited about the idea and have a pet project that they have some energy for and they'd like to get behind. And we're very interested in those situations.
Well, you had mentioned, some of these sites that have been around for 5, 10, 15 years. Real quickly, do you know offhand what a couple of them are, so that if folks wanted to kind of check them out and get an idea of what you're trying to accomplish?
Well, let's see, I don't know that I have all the names off the top of my head. One that is actually connected with eBay, because eBay just bought into it, is called Craigslist.
Craigslist?
Yes.
Okay.
This is a site that started in San Francisco, actually as a listserv, as an email list, and now it's actually a site. And it's very similar in philosophy to what we're trying to do. People can do what they want to do. They can post messages, and the only thing that they actually charge for is job classified ads.
Okay. All right. She's telling me we're just about
Okay.
out of time here, so
All
thank
right.
you both
Okay, well,
very,
thank
very
you.
much.
This is
You're
going to
very
be
welcome.
so
It sounds
exciting.
like a
I cannot
fantastic
wait
project.
to see what's going
and,
on.
Thank
speaking for myself, I'm anxious to
Great.
help out where I can.
Fantastic.
So
Thank you.
thank you both very,
Thank
very
you.
much again.
Great to be
Check
with
it
you.
out online. It is a new alternative news source, www.oshkoshnews.org. And from there, that'll get you to the rest of their little sections and their other blog, which is called OshBlog. Thanks again very much to all of you for joining us. Thanks to both of you for joining us. We'll see you next time. For Melanie Bloechl, I'm Cheryl Hentz. You take good care, and until next time, keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.